Hey guys, welcome back to my weekly report of the games I've been playing, and this week I played 3 games. So starting off, of course, is going to be Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. So I've finally finished the game this week, and I can confidently say that I really enjoyed it. I loved it, in fact. So it did have a bit of a rocky start for me because of the difficulty, given I didn't have access to all the jobs and I didn't know how the mechanics work properly. But after I pretty much completed chapter 4, I finally learned how to actually utilize all the mechanics in the game, and I was able to get through the rest of the game without any real major issues up until the very end. So I guess you can say that's one of my problems with the game, is the final boss, the true final boss, because there is a bad ending, a false ending, and then the true ending. And the final boss in the true ending is pretty difficult, only because this boss has a couple of one-shot kill moves, and you need a specific type of setup for at least one character to survive any one of those kills. And luckily I had the actual equipment and abilities that I was able to actually do that. Yeah, so if I didn't have that equipment, I would have been screwed, because once you enter the dungeon, you can't leave the dungeon. You have to beat the final boss to beat the game. So you can grind levels and get certain abilities if you have all the jobs, which I did, because once you reach chapter 4, you should have every job available in the game except for one, as long as you did all of the side quests, because there's a side quest that only appears in chapter 6 and onward in order for you to get the final job. And my only other complaint about the game is once you reach chapter 4 and beat chapter 4 and head into chapter 5, the game really expects you to grind on chapter 5 and onward. But if you're like me and grinded in chapter 4, I didn't need to grind in chapter 5 and onward, because I was able to blast through chapters 5 through 8 like it was nothing. Chapter 9 is the final chapter, and there is technically 11 chapters in the game if you include the false ending. But yeah, chapter 5 through 8, you can literally just blast through it, because you're essentially doing the same thing over and over again. I understand they probably did that because the game originally came out on Nintendo 3DS, but given that it's a Nintendo Switch 2 console, I was hoping they could have at least adjusted it so you don't have to do that many chapters and shorten it a little bit. But I guess they wanted to stay true to form for the original game. And yeah, I really enjoy the game regardless of me doing certain things over and over again in order to reach the final chapter. And it does make sense why you have to do things over and over again story wise, but still, just from gameplay, it kind of does get a little repetitive. But yeah, the other thing that was new to this game with the Switch 2 is the mini games, and they're like sprinkles on ice cream. Like, it's a little extra. It's not necessarily something that you have to buy this version to experience the mini games. There's nothing really that much to write home about. So you have your like music style rhythm game for the mini game, and then the other one is piloting an airship. And for the airship one is a little more involved than the music one, because you're controlling the airship as ring a bell, and you have to maintain course over these rings, and you also have to do different tasks that your other party members ask you to do. And there are higher difficulties as well as more courses once you progress through the story far enough. Same goes for the music stuff. But the real thing for you to do the mini games is to unlock the zero encounter item as well as the 400% encounter item, and you will need both of those when you inevitably decide to grind, because you're gonna have to grind at some point. But if you have the 400% and you set up your party in a certain way, you can pretty much grind to whatever level you need in just under an hour. That's what I ended up doing, because once you've reached a certain spot, you can earn enough money to buy the golden egg or the growth egg, which one gives you more money at the sacrifice of XP, while the other sacrifices money and grants you double XP. So once you get both of those, grinding goes by super fast, which is really nice. But I wish you didn't have to have an item for you to get these 0 encounters, because I think that should have just been in the game from the start. But it is what it is. And the side quests are actually worth doing in this game, because the stories that are attached to the side quest actually have an impact on the lore and the story of the game, so you get to learn more of what's going on for the people that live in this world, which is really nice. And you do get some nice rewards as well. So there's not that many side quests. There's maybe 5 and a little bit less than that in certain places. So there's not like 15 side quests in a single town. It's only like 5 or 6 depending on which town you're in. Some even have less. So yeah, overall it's pretty good. Really enjoyed it. And I would say if you've never played this game before, I do recommend you check this one out on Switch 2 if you have one. But if you're someone that has played the original game on 3DS, then I suggest you just stick with that version, because the only thing that's really new is some updated textures that look a lot more clean, a higher resolution, as well as the 2 mini games that were added to this game. Other than that, you're not really missing much. But yeah, at a $40 price range, this is definitely worth it. It took me a little over 50 hours to actually beat the game, which is a pretty good length. It didn't overstay its welcome. So that is everything I have to say. That was Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster. So the next game I played this week, of course, is Donkey Kong Bananza. I've actually progressed through the game even further than I did last week, because I managed to beat Bravely Default. So last week I think I was in the 600s. Now I am in the 1400s with the sub-level of the world. And every world since the 600s have been very different from each and every one, and I've finally unlocked all the Bananzas, which the last 2 I didn't really know, and it was a nice surprise to finally find out what they are, even though the designs of these Bananzas are pretty ridiculous but also cool at the same time. And once you reach the 1400s, you basically utilize all the different Bananzas to progress through the game and solve different puzzles and find different Banandiums. And yeah, I'm really enjoying the game. The only gripe I really have with the game so far is some of the bosses that you fight in the beginning of the game, you do fight again later on in the game, but they're a little bit more tough. They have a little bit more armor or different materials to make it a little more difficult, but still it feels a lot samey, and I wish we had more varied bosses. And from what I've researched, there's over 700 bananas that you can find, and so far I'm reaching close to 500, so I found a vast majority of them from just exploring and digging and doing all the other stuff, doing the challenges. And the challenges actually remind me a lot of DK64, and that's really good. I love that game, and overall it's been a delight. And I've also been customizing Pauline and DK with their tires and DK's fur, which is really nice to be able to personalize DK the way you want. And overall, it's, like I said, it's just been an absolute blast. I highly recommend Donkey Kong Bananza if you have a Switch 2. It's definitely a must play for the system, and I think it's worth getting the system just for this game alongside Mario Kart World, of course. But of course your opinion may differ from mine. That was Donkey Kong Bananza. The last and final game I played this week, of course, is going to be Wuchang Fallen Feathers. I've been interested in the game just because it's a Souls-like, and it kind of reminded me of Neo, and I love both Neo games. So I decided to give this one a chance, because the last Souls-like game I played was Lords of the Fallen that came out last year, if I'm not mistaken, and I really love that game. So for this game, it is a little different, and I'm glad that it's a little different. So the controls are, I don't want to say like it's not as responsive, but it is different from other Souls-like games. It feels a lot slower, and that's the word. And what's different with this game is that you have a disease called the feathering, and eventually you will become this monster that everyone fears, because everyone that has had the disease has turned into a monster. So that's why everybody attacks you, or at least mostly everybody. There's NPCs that actually talk to you, but because you have the feathering, you're able to utilize it in certain ways, and you have certain abilities you can use called tempering that allows you to use different techniques that others can't, which is really cool. And what I really like about this game is the way the upgrading system is. So once you get these blood, like they're almost like blood echoes from Bloodborne. They're basically like the souls of the game, and you use these to get cores to use in the skill tree, and the skill tree is for everything. So you upgrade your weapons here, your health, and how much health you get back from the flasks, as well as your agility, your strength. All of that good stuff is all under the skill tree, so you don't have to find a blacksmith in the world and give him a certain ember or a certain material in order for you to upgrade a weapon to a certain strength. So all the materials that you get to actually upgrade your weapons, you use those materials to actually upgrade it in the skill tree at the shrines, and you don't use your remembrance core to level those up. You just use the materials for the actual weapon itself. And once you upgrade a weapon, it actually upgrades the weapon type. It doesn't upgrade the individual weapon itself. So if you have the longsword you get in the beginning of the game and you find a new one, let's say you have the longsword at +2, the new sword you just picked up will also be at +2. And you can also use disciplines to change the type of special attack that your weapon can use. And you can also add these different perks that allow you to have different stat bonuses. Like if you have your might, it actually increases the damage of your discipline and things like that. There's different buffs and all like that. And you can also use the remembrance to basically imbue your weapons with certain elemental statuses, so like fire, poison, and other elemental effects, which is really cool. But overall, it does feel like a breath of fresh air compared to other Souls-like games. It does something different, and another thing that it does different is there's a demon mechanic. So if you die a certain amount of times, there's this bar that fills up. Eventually, when it does fill up, it spawns a demon version of you, and this demon version of you attacks you as well as other enemies if they're in the way. And if you manage to kill this demon, you get all of your souls back. But if you die without having that bar completely filled, then you can just go pick up your souls. But if you do have the demon spawn, you have to kill it in order to get all of your souls back. But if you end up dying by that thing, you'll lose all your souls completely, because when you die regularly, you lose only half of your souls and you can go pick them up. So that's very interesting. And depending on how much madness you have, because that's what they call it, if you have like a certain threshold, like 50% or even 90%, you get different bonuses. Like you will be able to deal more damage, but you also take more damage, things of that nature. And I think that makes this game a lot more interesting. And the only real complaint I have about the game, besides the game feeling a little bit slow with the gameplay, is the regular enemies actually hit harder than the bosses. Now don't get me wrong, some of the bosses I've faced so far have kicked my ass, but the regular enemies I've died to a lot more, and I can't believe it's like that. You would think the bosses would be harder than the regular enemies. In this case, it's the opposite. And you are able to summon certain NPCs depending on the quest that you're on and whether you beat them or not. So that's also a thing you can do here, but other than that, it's a single player game. And I'm hoping that I'm able to finish this game skill wise, because I do plan on playing this a lot more. So if you're someone that enjoys Souls-like games and you haven't played one in a while, I do recommend this one. It is only $50, so at that price point I can comfortably recommend that to you if you like Souls-like games that have unique flair to them and it's not just a copy and paste from Software's work. So that is everything I have to say. That was Wuchang Fallen Feathers. And once again, like I do every week, what games have you played and are you enjoying them or are you not enjoying them? Did you drop something this week? Let me know and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.